I'm an Amir Khan fan. I think he's a fantastic fighter to watch. I think he's had a great career. I've always enjoyed Amir Khan, whether you think he's the next big thing or not. He's never in a dull fight. He's always, fought good opponents throughout his career. There's a lot to like about him as a boxer. I really am a fan of Amir Khan. Cannot be clearer than that. What I would say, however, is I don't think he's coming out of this recent month looking very good. I really do not think that. The Kell Brook fight, I can understand there are reasons not to take that fight. But Khan did say, everyone remembers on ringside, I remember him saying when Kell Brook steps up, fights someone like a Devin Alexander, wins the world title, that's when the fight is worth making. Now Kell Brook stepped up, he's got a world title, he's fought, Sean Porter and won. Kell Brook is in a good position, to fight Khan. And the other thing Khan should consider, if he wants to fight the Mayweather-Pacquiao winner, is that the winner of that fight is going to have 3 belts at 147. The only significant title that they will not hold is the IBF belt, which Kell Brook holds. So say, for example, Mayweather beats Pacquiao, and perhaps he looks to unify the 147-pound division. I appreciate that unification may not typically be the first thing on Mayweather's to-do list, but having said that, if he beats Pacquiao and finds himself with 3 belts, it may be an attractive thing for him to do. Be the only completely unified champion in world boxing right now. So I reckon the person with the IBF belt is potentially in a good spot to get that fight against the winner of Mayweather-Pacquiao. I think Kell Brook is a credible opponent for Amir Khan. He's beat Sean Porter, who's a really, really good fighter. He's held the belt, he's defended it. It's a huge fight in Britain. I think Amir Khan should look to take that fight. I think he's got a very good chance of beating Kell Brook in a very tight fight, admittedly. I think it's 50-50, but Khan is certainly very, very live, and if anything, a slight favourite in my eyes for that fight. So I don't think he's come out of it too well. And I think the difficulty is, it now looks like Amir Khan is going to be fighting Chris Algieri. The reason that's difficult is he has vocally been rude about Kell Brook's level of opposition lately, specifically his fight with Jojo Dan. I saw Amir Khan writing on Twitter the other day, no Dan, he's taking the mick out of the level of opposition. Now, Chris Algieri is a better fighter than Jojo Dan, but Chris Algieri, it's very hard to call him a top 10 fighter at 147 pounds. In fact, he's never fought at 147 pounds. He's had one fight at a catch weight in the welterweight division and lost, being dropped 6 times. He's really a light welterweight. Coming off a very, very one-sided beatdown loss. So, I think it's hard to criticise fighting a mandatory in Jojo Dan and then coming out for Chris Algieri. And fighting Chris Algieri. Especially when it's clear that you haven't taken the Kell Brook fight. And you also haven't taken the Tim Bradley fight that was mandated for the IBF title. Now, I imagine Khan didn't take that Tim Bradley fight because he didn't want to be IBF mandatory, to get the shot to fight Kell Brook on a mandatory basis and get, like 25% of the purse, when he knows he can get it on a voluntary basis and, demand a 50-50 split whenever he wants. So, I can understand why Khan doesn't feel the urge to get the IBF mandatory spot. I've got no issue with that. But it's clear that Khan Bradley was available and that Khan Brook was available. 2 top 5 welterweights. Yet instead of taking those fights, he's fighting Algieri. It's difficult because I like Amir Khan, but he's been very, very critical of Kell Brook's level of opposition. Then he's fighting Algieri. The fight is so one-sided. Amir Khan is a much better boxer than Chris Algieri. But Amir Khan's kryptonite, potentially, is the fact that he doesn't have the best chin in the world. Chris Algieri, as I say, he's a light welterweight, and he's feather-fisted even at light welterweight, let alone against a real welterweight in Amir Khan now. So, it's a very one-sided fight, and that's really been emphasised by the fact that Showtime have decided not to take the fight on. It's likely that this is going to be showed, on Al Heyman's PBC. It's not going to be shown live on Showtime. And I think the reason behind that, which I've read online, is they've been sort of lambasted in the past for, showing really, really one-sided fights. Really one-sided fights. And, they're keen to avoid a sort of Danny Garcia, Rod Salka type fight if Khan fights Algieri. Because Khan really should, give Algieri a bit of a hiding, to be honest. It's hard to see Algieri taking rounds off Amir Khan. Amir's just too good, too fast, too advanced for a fighter like Chris Algieri. And I like Algieri, but it's all about levels. Algieri's a likeable operator, but he's a sort of mid to upper tier light welter, not a world-class welter. So, it's not looking good for Amir Khan. He's making these excuses that Kell Brook needs to get in a real fight. But Kell Brook's fought a better 147-pounder than Amir Khan's ever done in Sean Porter. Collateral, Alexander, Algieri, none of those guys are as good at 147 as Sean Porter. So, I don't think, and as I say, I'm an Amir Khan fan. I make him a slight favourite in the Kell Brook fight. I understand why he doesn't want, he's got an ego, he doesn't want to play into Eddie Hearn's games, he doesn't want to, fight on Matchroom and under Eddie Hearn's terms and be bullied into a fight. I get all of that, and I understand that, and that's fair enough. But I don't think he's coming out of this very well. At the minute, Kell Brook is looking to fight 2 times in the summer, including what it looks likely to be a big summer pay-per-view against Brandon Rios, which will be a stylistically entertaining fight. And out of nowhere, Frankie Gavin, Eddie Hearn's new signing, has been promoted up the IBF rankings because Amir Khan, as we've already discussed, hasn't taken the Tim Bradley fight. So unbelievably, it looks that the mandatory for Kell Brook's title could be Frankie Gavin versus Tim Bradley. Now, there are a lot of interesting ramifications of that fight. I think Tim Bradley destroys Frankie Gavin. So does Eddie Hearn put Frankie Gavin in that fight when it possibly destroys a future lucrative domestic title fight between Kell Brook and Frankie Gavin? Also, though, does Eddie Hearn want Tim Bradley to get that mandatory shot? Because I think Tim Bradley's got a very decent chance of beating Kell Brook, and I rate Kell Brook, but Tim Bradley really is a world-class operator on his day. So, it's a difficult situation, because for Hearn, does he want Frankie Gavin, his new signing, to get destroyed by Tim Bradley, and does he want to risk, having Kell Brook versus Tim Bradley? At welter, there's all these big fights, Amir Khan, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. Tim Bradley is the high-risk, lower-reward option. He's not a huge name. He's not the first name on casual fans' lips, but we know how good he can be. Look at the way he beat Manuel Marquez, for example. So it's a really interesting time at welterweight with these 3 British fighters. But what I think is potentially damaging for Amir Khan is you've got Kell Brook in a massive Sky Summer pay-per-view against Brandon Rios. You've got Frankie Gavin in a massive, massive fight against Tim Bradley. And whilst Tim Bradley would be a huge favourite in that, let's not forget that Tim Bradley just dropped a draw to Diego Chavez. So you couldn't rule Frankie Gavin completely out, even though he would be a very, very unlikely long shot. And then you've got Amir Khan, Chris Algieri. A fight that Showtime won't even show because they don't deem it competitive enough. I really think it's probably too late for Khan Brook in the summer now, but I really think that it's unfortunate that hasn't happened. I don't think Amir Khan's come out of it too well, and I think this has done some damage to Amir Khan, and that's coming in as an Amir Khan fan. Let me know your thoughts. I'm interested to discuss Frankie Gavin versus Tim Bradley. Will it happen? I'm interested to discuss Kell Brook versus Tim Bradley. Will that happen? And I'm interested to discuss Khan Chris Algieri. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.